Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
Let's rock and roll. 6:32.
Okay. So tonight's episode is let's start out with
this episode is dedicated to Americans for Prosperity. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, what? How do you pronounce? How do you spell it?
Prosperity. Prosperody.
Yes. Okay. I was like, I know that there's a pun in there.
Not prosperity, but prosperity.
Yeah.
They do parodies.
So, why don't you, because you're probably a little more up on this story than I am. Why don't you explain the basics to our?
Yeah. So here's where we want to start. We want to start with some local North Carolina news that has been stretched out. It is the middle of February right now, and this has stretched out since Election Day last year, since November. There's one race on the North Carolina ballot from last year that is still not decided. They refused to certify the election, and it is for a seat on the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Democrat Allison Riggs won the election, but her opponent, shithead Justice Griffin, challenged it, and so they did a recount, and she won the election. And they did another recount, and she won. And then they spot hand counts to see if they could do another complete count, and they were like, no, the spot count still went the same way. There's no irregularities. She won. So he came up with a novel idea. I will sue and say we shouldn't count the votes. That was his idea. So he has 60,000 votes that he has somehow identified that nobody is sure how, saying, I think these people shouldn't have been allowed to vote. Well, one group is anyone who is out of the country. So he doesn't think military votes should have been counted. He doesn't think, he says it's ridiculous that, did you know that you could be born to parents who are from North Carolina, but you could be born in another country, never come to America, and you're still a citizen and you can still vote in North Carolina? You can, because that's the federal law. If you're born to American parents, you're American, and for the right to vote, even if you've never been to the States, you vote wherever your parents last lived. And,
I did not know that.
Yeah, apparently he doesn't know it either, because he's saying that doesn't make sense. We shouldn't follow that federal law. We should just overrule it. And so that's one group, military people who are out of the country, who probably voted Republican more often than not. So it's a weird group, but it falls under his umbrella fantasy of why they shouldn't be able to vote. And then somehow some 60,000 odd votes, whatever, that he somehow identified randomly around all different counties, like not even in a particular place, and I think they were all early voters maybe, because what he said is those people had been registered for a long time and they didn't properly follow the most recent law about ID law and showing your ID, or in registering with either using ID or Social Security or something like that, which is garbage, because if you're registered, you're already registered. Like nobody had to go back and re-register. But he's saying, I think they should have. It's not in the law, but I think they should have to have re-registered. That we shouldn't count those people's votes. And nobody can even identify how he picked the 60,000 that he picked, because it's not from a single place. It's just like, here's people. And he has lost in every court that he's been to. He lost last week again in court.
But to be fair, if they put him on the Supreme Court, he wouldn't lose in the Supreme Court.
Well, that's the thing. He has described the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court as one of his best friends and mentors. And he is going to appeal yet again. And he wants to appeal until he gets to the North Carolina Supreme Court, where he then hopes that the overwhelming conservative majority will ignore the law and just say, yes, you win. Well, actually, we don't even know. We don't even know if not counting those votes would make him win. Like, it's not that he picked them from Democratic strongholds or anything. So it's entirely possible that she'd win by more.
We're going to cancel all the military votes, and she wins in a landslide.
I guess she won't win by more, but it could be a bigger gap. He could lose more votes than she loses. It's possible.
Yeah,
it's very strange. But it's also just disenfranchising 60,000 voters just because he wants a second, a third, fourth, whatever shot at the ring. And it's ridiculous that they've not certified this election this far and this many losses in.
Yeah.
But you know what they say, Republicans don't believe in democracy. And, it's Republicans who say that. There's a lot of clips of them on the Republicans speaking heads in the news saying there's too much democracy. We need to reduce the amount of democracy in this.
Yeah. Oh, and they used to say, especially when it comes to like ID, voter ID and stuff, like if we lose this, we will never win again. Like they know
someone in Pennsylvania said that. Like that.
Yeah.
If you let everyone just vote.
Yeah. What was the quote? Let me find it. The quote that you texted Alex and I earlier tonight about this topic.
Yeah, so it was from a book written by David Frum, and he said, this is an excerpt from the book. The context, I don't think hurts that it's not in full context, but if conservatives become convinced they cannot win democratically, they will not abandon conservatism. They will reject democracy.
Yeah.
He said that during the first Trump presidency, and man, is it playing out.
Yeah. I'm not, I know his name. I don't really know much about him other than that, to know, like,
political journalist and writer and, analyst and kind of guy. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's Canadian.
Oh,
so I guess, I guess we have to pay a tariff on reading that quote.
Yeah. So, yeah, you and I and Alex have all been probably seeing quite a bit of Jeff. What's his name again? Jefferson
Griffin.
I keep thinking Jefferson Davis, and I'm like, I know that's not correct, but
he's mythological.
Is Jefferson Davis mythological?
Griffin.
Oh, okay. I was like, are you a Civil War denier here?
Civil War denier.
Yeah, there was no Civil War. Like, you're that level of conspiracy theorist.
Also, when I first moved down here, I had someone say to me in a bar, we could have beat y'all in the war. And I was like, Nam? I don't know what war we're talking about.
Yeah. So anyway, so we've been seeing that a lot about this guy. And I had texted the two of you, I want to say close to a month ago, I forget when, that I wanted to, basically the defeated side of me that was feeling really doomer-ish after the election, I wanted to start focusing our podcast once a month at least on a topic that was more actionable, and something that was smaller and more local, because I think, I've heard lots of people say this is obviously not new information, but like you don't want like a third party candidate to run for president. That's not how you change the two-party system, for example. You need to get smaller local elections and then state elections, and then you can get Senate and Congress. And so like that's, the idea is like sometimes if we look at the bigger picture, it is actually harder to focus and to make that change. And so I thought once a month we should start trying to look at a topic that is something we can, not we, but like we and listeners and like the individual people that hopefully will get the message here can help. And North Carolina is a great spot for this message because we've been consistently in the news over the last however long I've lived here about the gerrymandering. Like, we're the gerrymandering example state right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we were even though we're not the only one, we're now like one of many states. We were the first state that had like a bathroom bill against trans people. And so like,
and I'll say the irony is the reason we did is we were the first ones to have a bathroom bill for trans people. I mean, it started where the city of Charlotte made like a proclamation or whatever that within city-owned buildings, people could use whatever bathroom they identified with. Like, they were protecting trans people in the city of Charlotte, and the state freaked the fuck out and said, no, we have to pass a law that overrides that. You can't be inclusive. Yeah. And then other people said, oh, good idea. Good, North Carolina. That's a good way to attack the most marginalized community in the country.
It's ridiculous. And it's always the guys that are like, we're small government. We want the government to be smaller and more local and like, and
not really more local. They want more state. Like in North Carolina, they don't want the federal government deciding, but they don't want towns to be able to decide either. There's a lot of laws that repeatedly come up that are trying to take the power away from towns and cities and keep them nestled at the state level because that's what they control.
Right. So anyway, it's that's the what I'm hoping we can do, and so
Can we
for
give
tonight,
homework? We give homework to people. We give homework, right?
I mean, if I would like to give, if you're listening to this at this point, I got to imagine that you're at least somewhat interested in making the world a better place. Like where, even if this podcast isn't doing exactly that, and obviously it's more comedy than anything else, I got to imagine if you're still listening,
You
118
would
episodes
want
in.
like I want to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. You know what comes next?
I've heard it, but I don't remember.
I want to buy the world a Coke.
Yeah. So my point being that, and we're not just to keep to
But
make
I
this
prefer Pepsi, quite frankly.
to make
I'm a Pepsi guy.
yeah to make it clear on this idea of focusing on a smaller, more local thing. It's not always going to be political. I mean, everything is political, but it's not always going to be like
Talk
the
to your
obvious.
congressman.
Yeah, well, that, and it's also not always going to be like some huge controversial issue. Sometimes it will be something much like it's not going to be like red versus blue every time.
Okay, so I'm going to give homework to people. First, Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot. How many elected officials have you met personally?
That are currently elected or of all time?
Of all time is fine.
I think one, Mitt Romney.
when he was governor?
No, when he was running against Ted Kennedy, he came. He was in a parade for the Labor Day parade in my town, and he was running against Ted Kennedy to try to get his Senate seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I shook his hand. I was like 8 or 9 or something.
Good job. Who knew that he'd be the best of them now?
Yeah, oh yeah. My opinion, especially because I've been fluctuating. I went from Republican to Democrat, and so my opinion of him has been a real roller coaster. Because I liked him when he was against Ted Kennedy because my parents were against Ted Kennedy, and then I voted for him. He was the first governor I ever voted for, and I didn't get to vote in a presidential election because the year I turned 18 was 2002. And so I voted for him, and within like days of him taking office, I was like, "Fuck this guy," because it was clear he just wanted to be president, and this was just a stepping stone. And then I was like, "Fuck him! I'm never voting for him again." And then obviously I did not vote for him in 2012. But I will say that when I see Bill Maher, it's one of the few things I agree with Bill Maher on. When I see Bill Maher saying I spent $1 million to make sure that Obama beat Mitt Romney, but if I could spend that same $1 million to have Mitt Romney instead of Donald Trump, I would do it. Yeah. So real roller coaster of a ride. So okay, so I've met one that I can think of.
So listeners, I'm going to ask you the same question. How many have you met? Shout it out. So I don't know how many I've met. If I just start to list politicians I've met, former Governor Cooper numerous times, current Governor Josh Stein in passing a couple of times, current Attorney General Jeff Jackson, met him a couple of times in passing, and we spent a half an hour over beers discussing how performing comedy and talking on the floor of Congress are similar. That was very cool. My former Congresswoman Deborah Ross, former Congressman previously David Price, and all my town council members, all the Wake County commissioners, my local mayor, on the state general assembly side, have not yet met my new. I'm sorry, I haven't met our new Congresswoman yet, Valerie Foushee, but on the state side, I have met. Say Yao Lu, who's my current representative, Maria Servano, my previous one, Gail Adcock, who was my previous before that, and then she became my senator. Sidney Batch, who's my current senator, state senator.
We get the point you're making. Okay.
Yeah, Natalie Murdoch.
This episode of the podcast is just Matthew doing an hour-long Oscar speech about
thanking all my people. I know what I'm going to say is I am not anyone special. It is super easy to meet these people. So you need to go out and you need to meet you don't have to meet all the people, but find out who your representative is and who your state senator is, and meet them. if you have a day off from work that you're going downtown for something, make an appointment to go to the General Assembly if they have office hours that day, and just say, I want to sit down for 5 minutes and meet you. They'll be happy to tell them your story and your top priority in politics. They'd be happy to do it. Or just pay attention to their schedules, follow them on social media, and they'll be in the spring appearing at picnics and stuff where you can meet them. Or they have town halls. Valerie Fouché has one for us tomorrow. Too late for everyone because by the time this airs, it would have already happened. But she has a town hall. She's in town in Chapel Hill, and she's having an open town hall for people to meet. They all have things where you can, if not meet them hand to hand and like to shake hands, at least you can meet them, be in a room with them and hear them talk and ask a question of them. But they go to the menorah lightings, the Diwali festivals, the Christmas parades. Like they're in your town. Your people, wherever you are, if you're in America, wherever you are, your local people are accessible to you. So go out of your way to meet one or two or three. That's my homework for you. I'll give you 6 months. That's your homework.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I think that, we have introduced enough of the idea. Now let's talk about, I think that we need to focus on local elections. Not you and I, but we as a people.
Well, you and I, but everyone else too.
Yeah, and that means this is the part that's going to get some people. And it won't get you or me. It probably won't get Alex. It means you got to vote every time. It means not just every 4 years, not just every 2 years, because
every municipal election, vote them all.
Yeah,
and it's not hard to research them. People have web pages, and if you're not sure how to judge people, pick a cause that you care about. Yeah. So, like for me, it's separation of church and state. For my wife, it's gun violence. For Mike, it's more accessibility to edibles. But pick a cause you care about and find an organization that represents that cause. So, but if you find an organization that stands behind those things, and they very likely have a candidate guide of who they're interested in, or look and see, what donations some of the candidates get if they're currently in office and who they get it from. So, you can help, if you're in North Carolina and you're liberal, look at the Indie Week. They do guides. Ballotpedia does kind of impartial guides that will tell you where people stand on issues. So there's ways to find out about people at every level. Pretty much, you just have to do a little bit of digging. It doesn't take a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and I can't think of an example, but I'm almost positive Matthew will be able to think of an example. A lot of times, when it comes to these smaller local elections, people. They can get crazier people, less hinged people, because people aren't going out and voting, like the way that they do for president or the way they do for governor. We got lucky with Mark Robinson that we had such a good campaign, but a Mark Robinson could easily get on your town council. Mark Robinson.
He was lieutenant governor. He made it.
Yeah.
The second number 2 spot. Yeah.
Right. So that's why local elections are, and you might think like, oh, local elections.
I would take it down even not just your town council or your city council, school board. That's the main place that Republicans feed into, try to get into school boards to really make a difference, and then go from there to town council or county commissioner or house or whatever. Like that's a big jumping off point for them because people don't think about it. And they can people can campaign on an issue that sounds nonpartisan. Oh, I'm against dress codes or I'm for dress codes or whatever. And it seems like innocuous, but it's what their foot in the door.
I mean, every sound bite or like quick snippet that they, pro-life, pro-choice, all those like phrasings that we use are marketing to try to sell our point. So when
marketers, I hate them.
Yeah, me too. So like school choice sounds like when you don't know what it is, school choice sounds interesting.
It's a good word. School is a good word. Choice is a good word. I'm pro-choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Until you find out that it's actually a way of stripping the quality of our public schools as a concerted effort to de-educate the American public. And that's another reason why school boards are a great thing to focus on, because, it starts out with like what we might consider semi-reasonable. Like we don't want too graphic of sexual material in the libraries. That sounds reasonable. And then all of a sudden,
the Bible out of the school libraries. It's got disgusting stuff in it.
Yeah. And then it moves on to, well, there should be sex ed because there should be no sex ed because parents should be should be in charge of what their kids know, which again, that goes back. We did an episode over a year ago, I think, about like parental rights, and I just think that it's kind of horseshit.
But parental rights, but it's what I think your kid should learn.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Is that in addition to a lot of the other stuff, is that also, a lot of these school. I actually want to do an episode specifically on education at some point soon, because I think that it's such a
I wonder if I can get a school board member to be on our pod. I don't know if she'd risk. I mean, because of course I know my school board member for this area, Lindsay Mahaffey. We've done volunteer work for her campaign. Her husband Terry Mahaffey is on our town council, so I know both of them, and they like Doctor Who. I don't know if she'd risk being on our podcast. I wouldn't do it if I was a politician.
We can keep it clean
for one episode.
You talk. You just run it by her, and
I can do that.
It won't be. We will still vote for her regardless of whether or not she shows up. Like because she's one of the good ones. Oh, that's not a good phrase to use.
One of those good blonde women.
Politicians is what I meant. One of the good politicians. So, yeah, no, I think that it's very important that we start focusing on actually voting every year. Sometimes that means a couple times a year, whether there's primaries or I know there's weird special election days sometimes, but we got to vote.
Yeah, the municipal ones are the ones that sneak up on you sometimes because there may be nothing statewide on the ballot. And like sometimes you'll see when you're driving around, like you see political signs and you're like, why are they there? Because like Mike and I live in different towns.
Yeah.
Same district for House and Senate, local House and Senate, and of course House. Federal House too, but we have different town councils and stuff. So we have different municipal elections on different days or in different years, different months, whatever. Yeah. So there are times when there's signs in my neighborhood and not in Mike's because our town councils are happening at different times. So it's easy to miss it because there's not a lot of buzz around it if it's just in your town.
Yeah. Oh, one of the first couple years, I can't remember which year it was. One of the first couple of years in North Carolina, I went down on election day to my voting. Sarah, no. I went down to the school that I voted.
It is good that your first impulse was to say Sarah. That's noble.
Myself. So I went down to the school.
Flexible.
Yeah, maybe we cut that out before we ask. Yeah.
Sometimes we talk about self-fellatio. Sometimes we talk about elected officials.
So we, I went down to vote. Because I had seen the signs and I had done the research on the people. I had not done the research on who was in my zone and looked up my specific ballot. Got to the school, gave them my information, and they go, "Oh, you don't have anybody to vote for. Like, there's no elections because it was so localized.
There's no ballot for this town.
There's no ballot for your neighborhood, essentially."
And it's happened a couple times in Cary where there's been runoff elections for one or two seats. And so if you're not in the right neighborhood, you're not in that runoff election, which that probably was.
Yeah. So I didn't, but, and
research you did.
Yeah. I will say going forward, I'm going to be much more, proactive about researching. There's a ton of ballot tools that are partisan
Well, if you go to, for us in North Carolina, but every state probably has this, it's NC Voter Lookup. If you Google that, or Voter Lookup in your state, you go in, you plug in your name, you plug in your county. It gives you the sample ballot. It's at some point close to the election when the ballot's finalized, you can get a PDF of your ballot that's specifically your personal ballot. Your address's ballot, so it's all the right people. And then go down the list, that PDF, researching people.
Yeah, and ballot questions, and sometimes those ballot questions, there is a better explanation. There will be better explanations or more specific explanations that are on the ballot, because sometimes the ballot questions can be purposely worded in a way. So, like, we'll use edibles as marijuana as an example. If you were trying to legalize marijuana on the ballot in North Carolina, if you're trying to legalize it, you would word it like, should marijuana be legal for or would cannabis, that's less important, I guess, the terminology for that. But should it be legal for medical use, or if maybe you're doing it for medical and recreational? That would be the most straightforward way. That is almost certainly not the way it would end up on the ballot. It would, because there would be somebody who wanted to doesn't want it to pass, so they're going to like try to adjust that question. So, would you want medical, or would you want marijuana available, even if it meant that children will be getting it? Like that. I literally had a pollster call me, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and start asking me, and she was like, "Would you want it legal for medical use?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." I don't. And she goes, "What if that meant that children would potentially be prescribed marijuana?" I'm like, "If they have something that they need to be prescribed marijuana for." Like if you're a 12-year-old who has leukemia,
sure.
if you have leukemia, I don't give a fuck if you're getting a reasonable amount that a doctor thinks is the right amount for you. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I said that to her.
If a doctor's prescribing it, then what do I care what a doctor is prescribing?
Yeah.
They know what they're prescribing.
Yeah. And I would imagine if you're back to a 12-year-old, if you're a 12-year-old who breaks their leg, you're going to get painkillers that are almost certainly more intense than marijuana. And I said all that to the pollster, and she was like, "Please, just yes or no's." I'm like, "No."
But they can't record anything with yes or no.
I guess.
Yeah, because they don't want your actual opinion. They want to skew it.
Right, and they want to, and they add those extra questions to help skew the data.
Yeah, because and then so the other thing on the ballot questions is the description. You're not voting on the actual question. You're voting on a description of what the bill is. They don't put the 20-page bill there. So someone decides on what that description is, and it can be misleading or just not even be clear. There's things that just things about that state government shouldn't allow, shouldn't dictate hunting zones. And you're like, I don't know what that means. And it was like, that means if people want local government shouldn't. And that means, what they mean is if there's a hunt, people are hunting next to an elementary school and bullets are flying into the school, and that town says no hunting in that yard, the state should be able to say no, we want people to hunt in that yard. Like, we don't want to infringe on anyone's ability to shoot in front of your school, which was literally on our ballot a couple of years ago. But it was it was worded that should the state have the sole authority to dictate hunting areas, and that sounds like, yeah, sure. Then you find out, well, the reason was towns were saying no hunting within 100 yards of the town, and hunters didn't like it.
Yeah, it's really important to try to get a good, clear idea on what you're voting for.
Yeah. And it's hard to know what the yes and no is. Like, you got to read it 3 times, and I say, which one? I know I'm against this, but is a no vote for it or against it?
That's fair too. Yeah, and I mean, it's easier with, actually, it's weirdly easier with politicians than with ballot questions. Yeah. But it's important that we are active in this process, and we are getting ourselves informed as best as possible. Now, I understand, because life is busy for most people, and it can be overwhelming, the amount of stuff that we are supposed to know. So, like, I get that this can be a daunting ask of us, of society, to go in informed. I'm not telling you need to. I don't think we all need to, like, be, we don't need to be at the knowledge level that, for example, Matthew's wife and daughter are, but we need to go in with some basic knowledge of it, with some understanding, and say, like, well, this is what I believe as far as, like, the way it should be. This is, and these are the things that are, as far as I can understand, based on a reasonable amount of research, are closest to that.
I mean, you can even say, I'm going to set aside an hour during election season to do research of the whole ballot. It doesn't take long.
Right.
Like, not a lot of things take a lot of work. And there's some things, and if you would decide that I am going to be as a party voter for the things that are partisan, because I don't care if I like the person or not, they're going to support the ideas I like, whether I like them or not. They're going to vote 80% of the time with my party. That's fine. Don't let people tell you can't party. In North Carolina, it used to be a button. Like, it used to be a thing you just filled in. Like, you had to vote president, vice president, block, governor, lieutenant governor, and then you could squirrel in a party vote that just says Republican or Democrat down the line. And they got rid of it, I think, because people were not like turning over to the next page and doing the nonpartisan things. Like that only went through things that were partisan. And then at the time, judges were nonpartisan. Those questions are nonpartisan. And there's, other things like that are not necessarily, people are not necessarily nonpartisan to run for them, but then their party affiliation is not on the ballot.
Right. Yeah. The question doesn't say Republicans vote yes, Democrats vote no. Yeah. On this part,
things like soil commissioner, there's like 5 people running, and 2 are Democrats and 3 are Republicans. And if you care for that, you may not care. Like those things, like we say, I may want to go to some candidate forum and hear what they're saying because I don't care about party affiliation. If you know soil and water, you know soil and water. Until you find out, well, one of them wants to remove all rules and let pollution be there because it's better for business, and one of them is I don't think people should ever drink water because it hurts a fish. Well, those 2 extremes you might not want to vote for. You may want one of the other people in between there.
Yeah. I agree. As far as voting the party, I agree with you.
I'm not saying people have to. I'm just saying don't feel bad if you do. That's an acceptable way to do it. I prefer you don't do that for Republicans, but I understand what people do. I get it.
Yeah.
Like if you think it's going to support your policy, I get it.
In some ways, it makes more sense to me. Like the fact that Mark Robinson lost here and Donald Trump won here is bizarre to me.
North Carolina is crazy for top ticket things being split ticket. I mean, we had a Democratic governor and Republican senators all the time. Trump wins all the time, but so did Cooper. So did Stein.
Yeah. No, but I
more votes than Trump did for governor.
Yeah. I'm just saying mentally it makes more sense for me that you go Republican all the way down or Democrat all the way down than splitting that difference. But
it may not be split. It may be I voted for Trump and then I popped it in. I don't care about anybody else. I just came out to vote for Trump. There may be a lot of that not voting down ticket. That's one of the things is just like getting out the vote is an important thing. Getting people to vote all the things is important. Because I think if you look at the results, you'll see that the higher up on the ballot it is, the more likely there are votes. Like soil commissioner and register of deeds don't get as many votes as governor does. Like people don't fill out. They're on the same amount of ballots, but people don't fill them out.
Which is another reason why it's important to vote in those down ballot stuff, local stuff, because
your vote is worth even more.
It is arguably exactly worth more. What I was going to say though about voting the party is and ultimately if you're willing to vote the party no matter what, I suppose this doesn't matter to you, but I personally like voting in primaries because that's where we get to have our nuance a little more.
Fight it out in the primary and then vote for whoever, your person or whoever beat your person. I mean, I was an Elizabeth Warren person. Biden was not, as far left as I would like him to be in the election. Turns out he governed further left than he ran. So he was actually better than I thought he would be on things. So yay for that. But it doesn't make a difference. Like I was voting for him regardless, even though he wasn't my first choice. In the primaries way back when it was between Hillary, John Edwards, and Obama, I was a John Edwards person. I mean, I'd met him. I performed comedy at the one of his charity centers, the Well, which was like an educational resource that he named after his son died. He started in his son's honor. And I'm so happy he lost because then his affair came out later. But
So I personally think that I voted for Bernie both times that Bernie was on the ballot, and then I voted for Hillary, then I voted for Biden.
Bernie would have been my second choice after.
I liked Elizabeth. Elizabeth Warren would have been my second choice.
I don't like voting for Jews, so he wasn't my first choice. But I voted for Stein. I didn't really have a choice.
Yeah. My thought, and people vote strategically in the primaries, which I get why people think to vote strategically, but I actually think that you should vote passionately as close to passionately as you can in the primaries.
I think it hurts if you vote for, I think so-and-so be best. But I think other people aren't as smart as me, so I'm going to vote for the one I think could win. In the primary, vote for who you want.
I talked to so many people in the 2016 primaries that voted for Hillary, and I said, why are you voting for Hillary? Bernie's better. And they all said, Bernie doesn't have a chance. Hillary has a chance. Hillary or Bernie doesn't have a chance. Hillary's going to win, and I'm like, well, if she's gonna win, then just
it doesn't hurt you to vote for Bernie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's a primary. You're not hurting the chance of winning later.
Right. And if Bernie got a ton of votes, maybe it would pull Hillary further left. And,
Well, I mean, there is a chance that the person who's everyone's third favorite wins if you split the votes in the top two, and like the people who are passionate about the third person vote for them, they win. Where if you would have just said, "Oh, I should have voted for Hillary," and she would have been what?
By the time it got to us in Massachusetts in 2016, there was no other options.
Yeah, who I supported and who I voted for were not necessarily the same because they weren't here.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think that that's an important thing to consider. But and maybe people don't know this, but smaller elections have primaries too, and so that's another spot where you can sometimes not all of them, but
like our town council, when seats come open, it's open. There's like 3 Republicans and 4 Democrats running for the 2 open seats, and the top 2 people get seats. So it's not there's not always primaries, but
but Congress seats, especially
the General Assembly does, It's so, sometimes there's no
IN team.
There's no general election. They already won. There's no one running against them. Once they won the primary, there's no one running against them in the general. It's a completely blue or completely red spot, and there's no opponent. It's the primary is the one that counts. You win the primary, and you're going into the seat.
Here's another thing to consider when you're talking about voting local, and not for you and I, but for the audience to consider, is that the more votes a local election gets, the more likely somebody may be to run, because a lot of times people do go uncontested. You may, we both listen to Cognitive Dissonance, and on Cognitive Dissonance they used to talk about how there was some seat in Illinois, because they were based in Illinois, some seat that a neo-Nazi was running in the primary against another Republican. But they knew whoever won that primary was going to be uncontested, and so you could have literally had a neo-Nazi uncontested on the ballot because of that. And so, but if the more people that vote, Democrats will be like, okay, well maybe we should spend some money and put a candidate here and spend some money campaigning here because enough Democrats are showing up. Or if you're Republican, vice versa.
I have a friend who ran for something in North Carolina. I don't remember if it was like I don't think it was Congress. It may have been the state house or state senate. But he ran as a libertarian because I don't remember if it was a Republican or a Democrat running, but it was someone was running unopposed where he lived, and he was like, "That's ridiculous. How can someone run unopposed? How can there be no unopposed?" Yeah. So he ran in a third party that didn't need a primary. He goes, I know I have no chance of winning. No one knows who I am. I'm not a politician. I'll tell you who he is now, though. If you go to a Hurricanes game, he is the in the arena announcer at the Hurricanes game. Nice. He's not on the radio or stuff, but he's the one calling the shots in the arena. But he ran just because it irked him that nobody was running.
Yeah, yeah. But a lot of times that's because there's not enough votes there for them to.
If you're going to lose 90% to 10,
why spend the money? Why spend the
time and the effort? Except, what if a neo-Nazi wins on the other side? It'd be nice if someone was there to be goalie.
Right.
Someone to hang back and protect the goal.
Yeah, and a neo-Nazi even if it's like a school board or whatever what was the soil one that you mentioned? Soil and water, at what we would consider the lowest rung of politics, a neo-Nazi could do some fucking damage.
Jenna, if you're listening, I did not say that soil and water was low. I'm just saying.
I don't mean low, and you know what I mean. I'm just saying the thing that people consider the least. Actually,
my friend Jenna ran for agriculture. I just thought it was funny to just throw something out there.
Anyway, so my point being, somebody who's a Mark Robinson or a neo-Nazi or one of those people can do damage at the lowest level of government, and so it's important that we are speaking up so that hopefully people will come in and say, hey, it's worth running against the neo-Nazi or Mark Robinson or whatever other wackadoodle is out there.
So last Saturday night, Saturday night, a friend of ours came over for dinner. We had delightful Chinese from Mr. Dumpling in Apex. They do a whole range of homemade dumplings, which is what we did. Though they also have really nice Szechuan food. Anyway, paid for you by Mr. Dumpling. And after dinner, my wife and my daughter and our friend spent the evening writing Valentine's cards to our elected officials. Nice. They, not just our direct ones, but like a whole bunch of them in the house. Obviously, not just the 3 or 4 that would take 5 minutes. Just to say thank you for the things you're doing. Thank you for trying. Thank you for fighting the fight, even though you're outnumbered. With their thought being they probably don't get very many slap on the back kudos when they're losing in on things, but they need that encouragement to know what you want and to keep fighting for you.
In general, in life, the thing that we hear about is the negatives. You're gonna get a complaint before you get a congratulations or a good job, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. All those things are true, and so yeah, being vocal is important, even if that is, hey, I think you're doing an excellent job, keep it up. Here's the thing I think you can also do. So I agree. Do you have anything else you want to add before we start to wrap it up?
Just to reiterate, follow the social media, like Instagram kind of thing, especially of your elected officials, because sometimes you don't know what they're doing. Like, if you like Valerie Foushee, who's our Congresswoman, Mike and I, not sure about Alex. She's like posting copies of her press releases on Instagram, and like she's been in one of the representatives that's standing in front of the USAID office trying to get in when everyone was locked out, and Department of Education. She's out there protesting. She's out there making speeches, and you wouldn't know it watching the news. Like they don't cover every little thing. So if you want to know what your people are doing, they'll tell you what they're doing.
Yes.
Follow their social media and find out. I know Deborah Ross has had like a press release every 2 or 3 days. I still follow her because before being gerrymandered, she was my congresswoman. And she's like, press releases about Trump's doing this and we have to stop it. Trump's doing that. And I'm sponsoring this bill or I'm co-sponsoring this bill. So, if you want to know what they're doing, follow them. Don't trust the media to tell you. Trust social media.
Yeah. It's just
that's stance of talking about the big stuff. Trust social media.
Yeah, trust good sources.
Yeah.
To tell you what they specifically are doing.
Right. Yeah. First-hand social media, not second-hand. Right.
Yeah. All right. And with that, we can start the wrap-up.
Well, I'm going to wrap up. If you're watching this on the YouTube, then you're really cool. You're not no boob. You got to like this video, make a comment below, and make sure you subscribe to the show. Don't be a sucker. Don't get shot to hell. Ring that notification bell. Was that a good enough wrap up, Mike?
If I wanted to re-record and like just do my own one, I would cut that from the public facing. But I am lazy and don't want to go through all the things.
You said to wrap it up. I heard you.
Okay. So anyway, if you are listening to us,
I was at the halftime show of the Super Bowl. God damn it! Give me some respect.
Do not talk about Kendrick that way. Kendrick was amazing. It's all I watched.
He's genius. Yeah.
Genius, and I loved that he ended it with "Turn the TV off." Literally during the Super Bowl, I was like, "Oh, this is like I can't imagine."
Chutzpah, that man's got chutzpah.
Yeah. If you are listening to this on any of your podcast apps, give it a like or a follow or whatever they allow you to do. You know what it is because you're the one using the app.
5-star review.
5 stars, reviews, all that. That's great stuff. If you want to support the show in a monetary fashion, you can go to patreon.com/talkingaboutthebigstuff, where you can, for $1, get the show 4 days early. For $3, you still get the show 4 days early, but it's got extra stuff in it. And for $10, you can get the uncensored version. Although, if actually, maybe this is the reward. If you do it, you don't have to hear Matthew rap ever again. I will cut any rap Matthew does out if you do our Patreon. Because, some of us on this podcast aren't working. And some of us on this podcast have children that need food and clothes. So, yeah.
Some of us have children who are nudists.
Yeah. Well, you have adult children.
Or nudists.
And Alex doesn't have... I have not noticed. Alex does not have Alex does not have children.
He just has nudists.
Anyway, Matthew, any last thoughts?
My only last thought is, once again, thank you for listening to us talk about the big stuff. Now make an appointment to talk to your representative and senator about the big stuff.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the three of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.